So committee of the whole to order. Roll call, please.
Here.
Here. Here.
Here.
Here.
Here.
We have a quorum. Some discussion items this morning. First is a discussion on the city logo, and we'll call on Jean Bowman. Good morning, Jean.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Before I get into the big reveal, and Lynn will wait for the drum roll, I wanted to remind you and our viewers at home about the purpose for a new logo or refreshed logo and the process that we undertook in order to get to where we are today. And just as a little side note, we have about 100 viewers on our YouTube channel watching either live or after a meeting. And for perspective, that's about double the volume of seats. We've got 56 seats here. So imagine this room filled twice of people who are watching our meeting. So I just wanted to share that little tidbit. So back in September, you approved the communications plan, and a logo refresh was part of that. We acknowledge that the design itself is paid for, but we do not have a budget line item for, rolling it out on all our vehicles and business cards and things like that. So that piece of it will happen gradually, but most of our communication is digital and electronic, so we'll update those items right away. The refresh logo is going to it's intended to give us some new energy, direction, some cohesion around the city and what we're doing and the progress that we're making. It's modern and more updated. The current logo really focuses on the falls, which, people are like, well, where are the falls? And we think about the dam on Cascade Street, but there's some other things that came out when we really brainstormed some assets and value propositions as part of the process. The other thing, and Councilmember Kwame asked me a while ago to remind you that late last year we had to change all our email and our website from the whole long.ci.fergus-falls.mn.us to fergusfallsmn.gov, which is not only easier for people to remember, but it's an owned government domain. Only government organizations can have the .gov on their URL. So this coincides with that. So the process, once we had the approval to move forward with the refresh, I hired Anna from Intrinsic Design. So she's a local designer who I've worked with before. She has experience in brand and logo identity. And so we had 5 different focus groups throughout the process, including some marketing professionals from the community, almost all of whom have been through a logo redesign in their professional careers, including the county, and they recently did this exact thing. We said, well, should we, with the kerfuffle the state had with the state flag, we're like, well, should we let people vote on it? And it was adamant, no. This is not a popularity contest. This is a strategic business decision, and hence the recommendation for what you'll see today. We brainstormed names, words, themes, values for the city. So I've got those if somebody wants to know what those are. And we shared that with the designer so that she would reflect those in the final outcome. She started with 15 different designs, and throughout the course of the process, we narrowed it down to 7, and then 4, and then the final one that you'll see today. So I think that's kind of how we went through it. I will tell you the focus groups included a marketing class at the high school and the senior center. So we have some input from both ends of our age spectrum. So with that, Lynn, I need drums, yeah, drum roll. So just take that in a minute. And I should thank you, those of you who took me up on the invitation to stop up and have a sneak peek of this. All right, so let me talk through this. So you'll see at the bottom part of the horizon the blue waves, and so that's the piece of our former logo that we're bringing forward so that it's not, all brand new. And they're less literal than the blue waves on the other one. So this could even be a road, a river, lakes, but it shows momentum. Motion. The other thing about blue is that it symbolizes honesty and trustworthiness. You'll see blue used a lot in banking logos. The top part are the prairie flowers, and these are definitely prairies. We went through the flower piece a long time. And then that little bird up there, that was added by somebody at the senior center who said, we're also known for geese. Well, we're not going to be so literal as to put geese up there because we're actually, part of the Pine to Prairie Birding Trail. So birds was a nice and an easy addition. This logo also works in smaller sizes. We have a version in black and white. We have it without the white illustration on the top, so because that really gets lost if it's small, but then it almost looks like a sunset. It's just the orange ball. So we've got all of that we'll put together in a brand identity guide once we get the go-ahead. So what's next? Once you approve the logo, the designer will develop our templates for those items I talked about before, whether it's our new website masthead, letterhead masthead for electronic emails, our Facebook page, and all of those good things. As a reminder, we paid for that last year, and then her finishing up on this is budgeted for this year, so there are no budget requests today. We'll roll out all the electronic renditions, probably, I'm shooting for June 1st, if we can get everything put together by then. And then again, we'll roll out the hard goods, vehicles, water towers, things like that in years to come. I think maybe it's 2027 that we've got a water tower planned. But as an example, the decals that our vehicles have, those are produced right here by Productive Alternatives. I think they're $13 a piece. Our staff puts them on. So we'll roll those things out as we have funds available. Any questions?
I just say, Gene, thanks for the opportunity for the council to be involved in the process and to watch the work. And then thanks for engaging. I know the one time I sat in on just briefly on the one meeting, there was clearly engagement from a lot of the businesses, larger businesses who have marketing departments, the Otter Tail Powers, Lake Region Healthcares of the world, who saw value in the process, who understood the importance of clearly communicating with the customers, in our case, the citizens of Fergus Falls. So thank you for involving them and getting the expertise that in the community. So
You bet.
I will echo that. Thank you for all your hard work on it. One just minor little technical thing that I noticed, if you look at the word mark, Prince, it looks like the I in Minnesota doesn't quite flow with the rest of the, I don't know if it's just my screen or, but yeah, maybe just,
It's bolder. I think
Yeah,
it
it's
looks
like-
bolder.
Is it good? Okay.
yeah, so I don't know if it got it wrong.
Well, and sometimes when a letter is so narrow, like an I or an L, they need to work a little bit with the kerning of, do some manual spacing to give it the room it needs to stand out.
clearly a question, and you maybe if you touched on this, maybe just elaborate. We're not going to go change the city parks and change as things are changed, as things are replaced, city park signs, et cetera, letterhead at City Hall, that's when they would be replaced. So to minimize, obviously, any change in costs, is that
Right.
accurate?
Correct.
I know that's one question the public would
Right.
probably have. Just want to emphasize that.
Thank
Because I
you.
know that's one thing that we talked about, like, we have replaced the city park signs in the last 6 years, so, it doesn't hurt to have the old logo on those things that,
Right.
where it
Well,
currently
and we
exists,
have
right?
talked a little bit with Signworks, or Sign Guys, excuse me, about, is there a retrofit that could just go over that top piece where the logo is? And it's not color, but, that's something that we'll look at for budgeting in the future.
Other questions, comments, that we can bring this to the council for,
You mentioned that there was 5 focus groups. I didn't really hear of any focus groups. So I wonder how do we pick these focus groups? I mean, obviously we did the youth and the senior center, but the 3 in the middle.
Yep, so we had the two of them were internal and 3 were external. So we had the external ones were the senior center and the students and then the marketing professionals. In fact, that was one of the first groups. And then the internal groups sort of burst in between were the department heads, and then we had an operations meeting.
Right.
So,
And then what about, are we standardizing color of vehicles? I mean, because we have some orange vehicles and we have some white vehicles.
We're phasing out the orange.
Right.
We've
Yeah.
got just a few left, I guess.
Yeah.
We did purchase a new orange truck a couple years ago, a large truck, but that was used and we didn't have an option of,
Painting it.
we could
and
paint it expo.
what's our first new vehicle to come? The garbage truck? This refuse?
Hopefully, it was due to be
2
delivered
years
last
old.
November. So, yeah, it'd be a garbage truck or a 3/4 ton pickup.
and on that question, like I was just thinking about this the other day, the plow trucks and the sand and salt trucks, are those always orange, or will those Are you thinking about, and I'm just curious, I was just, because the state ones are orange and the county ones are orange. Is it just an orange color that they come in?
They can be white.
And the decal, I actually have a sample of the decal before we got to final, but it's got a white background on it. So even on an orange vehicle, this will really pop.
Other questions? Would someone like to recommend we bring this to the council on Monday night?
I'll do that.
Thank you. Scott?
I'll second that.
Thanks, Tom. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Do you want that on the consent agenda or discuss?
I think we might as well
I would say we
Unveil it to
discuss
the-
it personally. I think.
unveil it to
I
the
think,
public.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, Gene. Next item for discussion is the open forum policy, and we'll call on our city administrator, Andrew Bremseth. Morning, Andrew.
Good morning, Your Honor, council members. I'll also have a grand reveal, but there it is. Not nearly as exciting. Thank you for the drum roll. And you guys are my focus group, so appreciate your participation. But no, in all honesty, you guys, at the last council meeting, had a really productive discussion about this topic, and I appreciate that. I think it was, it's been a little bit of a charged topic, obviously, for the city, and you guys handled it very well. And I think actually made our jobs pretty easy to come back today. So at that meeting, you directed us to bring this back for further discussion, excuse me, with some proposed changes, and that's what we've done here today. Kind of the big, I guess, change, so to speak, and you guys got to this at the meeting last week, and it felt like there was a majority in favor of that, is to move the open forum from the middle of the official council meeting to a point in time that is outside of the regular meeting. And what we've suggested here in the revised policy is doing that at 5:15 p.m. on council meeting Mondays, so prior to the meeting. The expectation would be that the council is present and seated at 5:15 in the event that people show up. There will be no prior sign-up required, so there may be times where you're here and there's not anybody to speak, but at least you're prepared in the event that somebody plans to do that. This is consistent with the practice of the other local governments in town, and when I say other local governments, I mean the school district in Ottertail County. Both of them have their meeting or their open forum portion of their meetings off camera and outside of their regular meeting. They both do require previous or prior sign up, but again, I think that was important to this council to maintain full and fair and equitable access to everybody who does wish to address the council at that opportunity. The other kind of piece that was prominent in the discussion last week was how we're going to follow up or respond to speakers. And what we've kind of laid out here is that, if somebody's just sharing feedback or a comment, there may not be follow-up necessary. And that's a large majority of our participants. They're telling us how they feel about something. And certainly they're welcome and entitled to do that. We encourage that. But that may not require any sort of follow-up. So there may be times where follow-up's not necessary, but if there is a time where somebody's coming and they have a legitimate question and they would like us to respond to that, what we're proposing we do is that if we don't have the answer on the spot, that we take time, research the question, get the answer, compile those answers for the following council meeting, and then have the mayor kind of read those answers or a recap of that. In some cases, we may ask that you guys make a motion directing us to work on that. And, I don't think the intent is for the public to kind of create work or direct work or, have a very labor-intensive task for Bill to analyze somebody else's budget or things like that. It's really to answer questions that are posed or that pertain to city business. And most times, in most cases, the data will exist, and it's just a matter of getting the information and sharing that information or compiling that information. So I just want to be clear. I think that the intent is not to, completely hijack the direction of the council and to push staff in a direction that would be counter to the work that's already happening. The other thing, while there's no prior sign-up required, one thing I am asking that we implement is, and this is very similar to anybody who's testified at a legislative committee or any sort of hearing, after you're done speaking or just before, they have you sign a little clipboard, with the purpose of that being capturing the correct spelling of your name for the minutes, but then also for the ability to follow up. So that would be what I would ask, is that individuals give us the correct spelling of their name so we can capture that, but also an email address or a phone number so we can actually follow up if that's something that's necessary. So wouldn't use that information for anything other than that specific thing. And then finally, there was a question about how the minutes would be handled, and we looked back. We previously had the open forum outside of the meeting, and so we looked back as to how we handled that previously. And what we would do is, after the official minutes of the meeting, Lynn would sign her name to that after it says it adjourned at a specific time, and then below her name, it would list the people that appeared at the open forum prior to the meeting and the topic in which they discussed. So there is a permanent record that would follow with that date, but it's not actually officially part of the minutes themselves. It comes after the minutes of the meeting have been concluded. So I would suggest that we continue to do it that way, because it is nice to have a public record or a permanent record, so we can reflect back on that if we need to. On the screen and in your packet is a quick red line version. Staff felt that a lot of the other things that we have in place, such as the 3-minute time limit and the ability to speak on a certain topic twice in a 12-month period, were reasonable and, again, in line with both the county and the school district and how they handle things. So not an uncommon thing, and frankly, it's something we see across the country when we look at policies and hear some of the conversations that are happening right now around open forum topics. It is a really interesting time. This is an issue literally across the country, and really the issue that a lot of cities are facing is folks are bringing international or national political topics into local city council meetings and trying to get city council members to take a stand or take a position on an international or national issue. And I think city council members across the country are wondering what's our role and where does it start and stop. So this is a very hot conversation right now. But looking at the red line version, we just mentioned the 5:15 on the dates the city council holds their regular meeting. Should be an item that's not on the agenda, but is a city issue. It is not intended as a time to make a presentation. And again, as we mentioned, the open forum is not televised, broadcast, or streamed. And quite frankly, the intent again is that they have access to you, the 9 of you, in this room, not to have a platform to be political or to, create any other issue. So I think that is a very fair and honest way of doing that. We added participants are asked to provide their name and contact information to ensure the correct spelling of names and the best way to respond to the speaker, as I mentioned, kind of straightforward. And then at the bottom here, you see if information is available, staff will provide a recap for the mayor to read at the next city council meeting. And then we did add, the city council may refer the issue to staff. Again, in the event that it's an issue that the city council does not want us to spend any time on, or it's not practical to spend time on, or it's, not a relevant issue. So that's kind of what we're looking at, open to whatever other changes or suggestions folks have, but I think this is a good starting point. And, I hate to say this as we're approving it, but the reality is if it doesn't work, we can always change it. And so this is done by resolution, and it just takes one action to amend the policy at any time.
Thanks, Andrew. And then just one thing to maybe add or clarify. So then, as we'd mentioned at our last discussion, if there was something brought up during the open forum session that the council did want to put on the agenda to take action on, to direct staff, whatever, they can simply do that at that meeting, correct?
Yeah.
Because they have not approved the agenda for the official meeting.
Exactly right. That's correct. And the other thing is, if the answer is readily available or it's something that we know off the top of our heads, I would say we respond in real time at the open forum session, and then it's resolved.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, well, go ahead, Tom.
Do you need a resolution now?
Yeah, we should get a motion on the floor and then we can have discussion of. So
I will offer that.
motion to bring this policy as presented to the council for discussion.
Yeah.
Thank you. Second, Scott.
And I'd like to offer an
Yeah,
amendment.
thank you. Okay, go ahead, Tom.
Thank you, staff, for your work on this. I really appreciate it because it is an issue that we need to, just deal with, set a policy, and move on. I've gotten comments about You're not putting the open forum on video. What are you trying to hide? And as far as I'm concerned, we're not trying to hide anything. Where I'm coming from with supporting not broadcasting those comments is that anybody can come in and say whatever they want. Let's say hypothetically we have an individual that comes in all the time and tries to tell people how to do their job when they have no idea what they're talking about. This doesn't give that hypothetical individual the ability to take clips from their presentations to the Fergus Falls City Council and say, look at my great message that I presented to the City Council, and continue to spread misinformation and lies, hypothetically. So I fully support that, and I think the policy looks great. And if somebody wants to come in here and have a reasonable, productive conversation with us, let's do it. But if somebody wants to come in and bludgeon the same points over and over again for political gain, again, when they don't have any idea what they're talking about hypothetically, then we don't want that. We don't need that. That wastes everybody's time. And so, great job, staff. I fully support it.
Thanks, Tom. Scott?
I just have a suggestion for an edit or two. In the first paragraph 1, the sentence reads, regarding a business item that is not on the agenda of a regular meeting. I think that if someone wants to come and speak to us, whether it's an item on the agenda or not, since it's not a part of our business meeting, I think that's sort of redundant. And so I'd suggest that following the sentence where it reads, the open forum is an opportunity to address the Fergus Falls City Council regarding a city business item, period. Delete the rest of the sentence. And then the last sentence where it's, the open forum is not televised, broadcast, or streamed, I would add the word recorded. Because I don't believe that we're going to be recording. I think the intent is to not even have it on video or anything. And so if we were to say the open forum is not recorded, televised, broadcast, or streamed, I think that would be further more clear.
I think,
In a less clear way to say it, but I think that's the idea that I'm trying to suggest. So that would be the edit or amendment that I would offer if you are agreeable to that.
Yeah, I think that, well,
I just have a question.
yeah,
Would the intent then be that you would allow people to speak to a topic that's on the agenda, 15 minutes later? And my concern with that would just simply be that, that would come before the staff has the ability to present or kind of, I don't want to say
Exactly.
frame the issue, but provide the background and or the work they've put into the particular issue and set the stage how they kind of wish to for a discussion. And I would have a little bit of a concern with that, but I totally understand the intent. It's not part of the meeting, so who cares what they talk about? That would be my only concern, is that, them setting the tone or setting the stage for an item that, say, Bill has worked the last 2 weeks on and has a presentation prepared for, and all that kind of thing. So that's my response to that. But whatever the council wants to do would be fine.
yeah, and I was going to say the same point, and I think that, and maybe I'm not correct, maybe I'm biased in my thinking, but it seems to me that we've been pretty good at allowing people to talk after the council has had their discussion on issues, and so I completely understand the intent. We don't want to limit conversation, but I think that the order in which things are presented, I think, is important, so maybe it's something we can think
Maybe
on.
think about that.
Yeah,
between
let's
now
think
and
about how we
Monday.
can achieve that. The other option is, because clearly other entities, like the school board, allow for conversation at the end of a session. I don't know.
Mayor,
I understand the point, yeah.
Excuse
Jean.
me, I was just gonna suggest, maybe we just add a sentence right after that it's not on the agenda, and then say, agenda-related topics should be discussed during the meeting where they fall, or something like that, just so people know that they will have that opportunity.
I guess what I've sensed was that if people came wanting to talk about something that was not on the agenda, that was fine, but if it was on the agenda, they expected to talk about it and then sometimes would not have that opportunity. It's like, well, when am I ever going to get to say what I want to say about this? And so that seemed to be the puzzlement. And so I thought, well, why even specify it? Just if they want to talk about something, let them talk about it.
Well, and oftentimes, if I can think of examples in the past, after staff has had a chance to present and the council's had a chance to discuss, their issue or their concern is resolved. Maybe it's as simple as, if they express that they are here to talk about a particular issue, we make note of that and we give them the opportunity at the proper time in the meeting. Like just so that it's clear that they have that opportunity to talk. Because a lot of times when people have shown up, they don't have the information. Staff hasn't been able to present. Again, rather than their issue is resolved after the normal discussion of the council, and I don't want to get that out of order, quite honestly. But if that makes sense. But yeah, you're right. Then they just council votes on something and it goes away. But if they clearly identify that they want to talk about something, we can always make sure that their opportunity is presented during the meeting. Anthony?
I would advocate that it is televised. More because, as Gene just said, there's over 100 viewers. And, I think if we're, in the effort to be transparent, then, and I think the fact that it is outside of the regular meeting, it isn't part of the meeting. We've got the kind of like the 3-minute rule, and we've got the, twice on the same subject matter. And that obviously then becomes our role to kind of police that to some extent and adhere to the policy. But I think there are a lot of people that do watch the council meetings on video, and if somebody wishes to speak to the council, then I don't think it hurts for us to allow that to be televised or whatever, recorded in whatever fashion it is. But just because I think it shows that there's an openness out there, and that because we seem to live in a conspiracy world today, and anything that you do that is perceived to shut down communication is always viewed badly, and gives fuel to the other side to say, what are they hiding, when we don't have anything to hide. So.
Thanks, Anthony.
I certainly see both sides of
Yep.
the
Yeah,
argument.
clearly.
say-
Just where you guys want to land.
Clearly, I completely understand, and I've thought about this a lot because I've always been an
Just want to play
advocate.
devil's advocate.
No, and I appreciate it. I think it's an interesting conversation, and I would say this: I anticipate we'll have a good, healthy conversation on this on Monday night. Right? There'll be people here to. And I think we can all think through that, because clearly I don't think there's anyone up here that doesn't want transparency. The last year or a little less than a year, we've gone to this.
Yep.
And balancing that, and I would say this, I think that there has been some individuals who have taken advantage of that that opportunity for transparency. There's been things that happen in an open forum setting that just aren't productive to the conducting of city business. I think that's what we're trying to balance here.
And
So,
that's where I think if it's outside of the meeting, so it's not part of the official meeting.
yeah.
And the video should stop and then start again for the council meeting.
And I think, one thing is we've never adhered to the 3-minute
Yep.
time limit. We once have adhered to the limit of 2 times per year, and that's what got us to this conversation. So I think that if a council, we decide that we're going to stick to rules, I think that's the important thing. Like, here are the rules, everyone's going to play by them. We're going to do it in a civil way. So we'll have a good, healthy discussion on this on Monday. But I appreciate that very much, Anthony. Clara.
So from a technology standpoint, with starting and stopping the meetings on YouTube, we might run into an issue, so we should probably look into if that will actually work.
It needs time to reset, the
Got it.
system does, so it will cause everything to.
So we either need to leave the video running the whole time, so if there's downtime in between open forum and council, people will see and hear you, or we'll have to start the meeting after the technology restarts itself.
And I'd just say that, like, if we remember you mentioned the local units of government, the school board is the one who, suggested. They had some issues with people that they felt were taking advantage of that policy, and they said, this is your opportunity to address the council, or to the school board in that sense, but this, in our case, the council, not the public. And once they stopped televising it, those issues went away. So I think there's some validity to that too, and that's where we're here. So anyway, we'll have a good discussion on Monday night.
I'll say mine.
Scott, did you want to?
No, he's gonna
I'll
say-
save mine. I won't argue with Anthony till Monday night.
Hey, we can do it in a civil way, and I do, honestly, I appreciate that, so.
I just
yeah,
have a
Laura.
quick question. So the open forum that we had prior to this, when it was before the council meeting, was that televised?
I don't believe so.
No?
I don't
Okay.
think so. They were required to sign up, though. That would be
Yep.
the main difference. yeah.
Okay, I just couldn't
and the
remember if
si-
it
yeah,
was
yeah,
televised.
and on the sign up, we went from like Friday, I think, at noon, Thursday at noon, Friday.
At noon to Monday at noon, just so
Monday,
that
noon.
if someone came in, that I had time to give that open forum request in writing to you, so you can staff, so that there was, time to prepare and to know that you had to come in at 5:15 that night.
Yeah. Thanks, Lynn. I guess the point is just like we've adopted and changed this as to try to make it work for us as the people who are conducting the business of the city, but also for the public who want open and transparent meetings. So we'll continue the discussion. But there's a motion to bring this policy as presented for the time being to the council for consideration. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you, Andrew, and we look forward to a healthy discussion on Monday night. Next, we'll call on our Chief of Public Safety, Kyle Bergeron, for a couple issues. The first being a grant agreement with the Office of Justice Departments. Morning, Chief.
Good morning, thank you. Battling allergies, so please give me a little break here. The first thing you have before you is a grant agreement with the Office of Justice Programs. I think I don't even remember how long ago it's been since I was before you talking about recruiting and retention of staff, and been working on some pathways to policing programs. And that we've been picking up some traction on that. This grant opportunity presented itself here in the last month. We applied for it and we were awarded 16,348 or something in that ballpark. So what I need from you today is a resolution approving the city and the state entering into that grant agreement. It is a matching funds agreement, and we do have enough money. Currently, we're 2 people short, so we have plenty of money to pick up our 50% of that matching grant. So that's what I'm looking for today, is a resolution to enter into that agreement.
Thanks, Chief. Someone like to offer a motion that we bring this to the council
I'll make that,
for
Your
a
Honor.
resolution?
I'll second, Your Honor.
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks, Scott. Any questions for Chief Bergeron? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Thanks, Chief.
Okay, and the next item is to talk. We don't really need an action. I guess we're looking for just some consensus and feedback from the council as a whole. The Cannabis Committee has met 3 times. There's been a lot of good discussion and a lot of good work that has come from those 3 meetings. I think for the most part, and please, if I say something that other people on the committee don't agree with, correct me, but I think we're in a good place as we talk about the different type of establishments, from retail to meso and micro, and I'll just give you a brief definition. Meso and micro businesses have different types of industrial purposes that can happen there. So when we talk from a zoning perspective that those should probably be in an industrial zone, I think it just makes sense by the type of activity that can go on there besides retail. And I think we're seeing that in a lot of other cities as we're looking at some articles from other cities in Minnesota. I think they're following that same path. The question before you today has to do with retail establishments. And in the state law, it allows for a setback from schools of up to 1,000 feet, and from certain parks and treatment facilities, daycares of 500 feet. And so I think as a group, I think there's at least some general consensus that we're looking at a B3 and higher zone, B3, B6 for retail, and then into the I zones as well. The question has kind of come up as we get to downtown. So our downtown zone is a B3 zone, and we've had some discussion as to the park. So we have now the Riverfront Park here that basically runs right through the heart of downtown. And if you start imposing a 500-foot setback, you're pretty much excluding the majority of the area downtown. No, if you go to the one that's a close-up of downtown, I think that was the closest. So the yellow zone there is the B3 zone in the downtown area. And so we've had some discussion, and I think we're just looking for some feedback of, do we feel 500 feet should be enforced in the downtown zone? Do we feel that we should reduce that restriction to something other than 500 feet or not have a restriction at all? And I think the group has brought up some good points of, you have the new splash pad and everything. Do you want a marijuana retail dispensary outside of your splash pad? And then we've brought up some locations here on Washington Avenue where we might be close to Wright Park, but does it make sense to have a 500-foot setback there? So I guess I just am kind of facilitating the discussion today, and again, I think as a group, and maybe some of the different people on the committee want to share their thoughts too with the group, but just looking for some feedback.
Thanks, Chief. Scott?
Kyle's right. This is we've been at three great meetings, and there's a little, I don't want to call it division, but there's a little difference of what people think or what we can do. And my first thing going to the meeting, I said I did not want any marijuana in town, period. And of course, the chief informed me that that's not going to happen. We're going to have it in town no matter what we do. And so my goal, I think, was to not see it in our downtown. I've been in a few towns just recently where it's on their main street. I just think it clutters it up. I don't think it needs to be on Main Street. I think we have to respect the people who live down there. I think we need to have it in the B3 zone out to the west, I think is where we kind of looked at it, if we enforce our radiuses. I don't, it's not the only thing would be, and Ben and I have gone through this about, it might be a little cheaper to build something downtown or have a store downtown. But I just don't agree with it being on our main street. It's the signage and all that, and we can do the signage thing, whatever we want, but that's just kind of where it came out. It was my discussion. I said, let's just go to the council and see where they're comfortable, what they want to do, not just what I want to do. And so that's kind of why we're here, and that's part of it. I mean, we can decide where it's going to go with the zoning, and I just don't feel it should be downtown. If we follow the radiuses of our parks, it won't be downtown, but that's just kind of where we're at. What we kind of talked about pretty much is where it should, how are we going to put it and where it's going to be. And no matter where it's at, they're going to find it no matter what, because they have these great things called phones. I mean, it's going to be, just because it's not downtown, you can put it out in the middle of an industrial park and the people are going to find it no matter what. So it's not about the marketing part of it. It's just, I just don't feel it should be in our downtown.
Thanks, Scott. I'll just provide, I appreciate your perspective, and I'll just say I've been probably the voice on that committee that disagrees, and I'll just bring my perspective into it. And I think it's a great point. Like, do we want a cannabis dispensary within 500 feet of our brand new splash pad? I think that's a legitimate point, and I think if there's any law enforcement or structural building issues that would put our downtown as not the ideal place for a cannabis dispensary, completely agree. My perspective is this. I think that, we have liquor store within 500 feet of both of these parks we're talking about downtown. I think that there is some stigma culturally to the issue of marijuana. I understand it. I feel some of it too, but I try to remove that from my decision making and say this is going to be a legal substance. We're going to be able to control the number of licenses that we have in town. There are 2 businesses downtown that currently sell lower levels of hemp-derived THC. 3 downtown. Thank you, Lynn. One's over here too. Yeah. Anyway, I guess my perspective is just that. Also, from a business owner, from someone who started a business of a controlled substance, manufacturer of a controlled substance, I know that the access to those buildings can be critical. An existing building that's downtown does provide some access. And again, that's what I'm going to bring into it. If there's law enforcement or public safety issues, I will completely respect those issues. But stepping back a second and just looking at it as a legal use or legal operation of a business, I would say, I think we want to take our cultural stigmas as much away from that decision as we can and make it in a reasonable way. So anyway, that's probably more than I needed to say, but that's perspective I'm going to bring into it. Scott.
A couple of things I could add. First of all, the licensing for these dispensaries is going to be done by the state. And so, on the one hand, we may or may not have one, two, or more licenses that will, or businesses that may want to open here. But the initiation of that really is going to come from the state, and we're not necessarily going to be able to control the number of those that are going to request a license from here. But once the prospective owner gets a license through the state, then it's up to us as far as the restrictions for zoning, permitting, things like that. Then we'll have some say. But as far as the initial licensing, that isn't something that's just solely in our hands. It's not our choice to make. The next thing I guess I'd say is that there's a pressure, I guess, that I'm sensing that we just treat these businesses like any other legal business. And I don't feel that that's necessary. I think there's lots of conditions that are going to be present here that make this a different thing. And we ought to be able to treat it differently and not feel like we're wrong in doing that. And I think that our community will support us that way. One of the areas that has been brought up by what Kyle has brought up here is how to handle this zoning question. So when somebody does get a license from the state and they come and they want to find a location here, then how's it going to be handled? The things that we talked about in this committee that were significant, first of all, we don't want it near any residential area. It's got to be in a business setting and not somebody's home and not near anybody's home and not near any residential area. One of the questions about even the downtown area, whether to include it or not by whatever method, there's a lot of residential space downtown, even though it's a B3 zone. There's lots of apartments above buildings and whatnot. And I just think that adds to a lot of potential problems, having a business like this in a place where there's a residential aspect to it, regardless of the zoning. I went and looked at our city code, and I think some of the language that's used in the section 115 concerning adult businesses really would apply here. And in that section, there are lines that indicate that you can't have one of these businesses within 500 feet of another one of the similar. You can't have it within 500 feet of a residential or agricultural. You can't have it within 500 feet of a daycare center, a school, place of worship. I think all of those factors would apply in the same way to this type of a business. And in addition to that, I would even add, I'd like to see them in a standalone business, a standalone building. And we talked about that in our committee as well, where it's not in some kind of shared space. It's not as a tenant in a building where there's other businesses going on. This ought to be something that stands by itself. And I think that we could make those part of the registration, or we register them, right? Or permit them? Yeah, as a part of the requirements on the registration. Last thing I'll say is this. I'm sure that there are members of the public that would like to weigh in on this, and I think the venue for that would be in the Planning Commission. And so sooner rather than later, I'd like to suggest that we offer the opportunity of the Planning Commission to take up this topic and have some hearings, have some opportunity for the public to chip in. And then once they've had a chance to review it, they can come with their recommendations, and that I think would be helpful.
I think that's a good idea, Scott. I think that's a good procedure to take. It sounds to me like, and I think I would say that I think the consensus of that four-member committee, I think it's four-member, right? Laura's on there, myself, probably is to keep the 500-foot setback from city parks, which would eliminate the downtown business. I would say that's the direction that group is going. It's not unanimous, obviously, but I think that's the direction it's going. So I think if we continue down that road and we bring that to the Planning Commission and let the public have their say and just follow an orderly process that everyone's aware of, I think that would be my recommendation. Chief, does that make sense to you?
Like I said, I really believe in democracy. I mean, I'm kind of getting on a soapbox here, but you are the citizens. You are the ones that control, the laws of our community. I'm merely here to enforce what the citizens' rule is, And the other part of it is I just think that I don't think we can be ambiguous. Like, I think if you're going to have rules on zoning and somebody wants to come to town, they should be able to read your zoning laws and they can figure out where they can go and where they can't go. I think I'm trying to save everybody on the council a little bit of headache of having people constantly come in looking for variances or those types of things because they want you as a government entity to make what they want fit for them. I think really as a developer, you should, most professional developers know what they can and can't do in each zone, and they're going to make it work. And I think, again, as what we've talked about is, as a group, we're not opposed to rezoning if it's appropriate and it meets the standards, not looking at spot zoning. But if there is a property and it abuts up to another zone where we can look at rezoning, I think everybody seemed in agreement to that. Really this, I was hoping to keep this scope just kind of to the downtown. I don't really have an opinion on it one way or the other. I just think it's, I think everybody kind of made some very valid points, and I think it's just really up to you to do what you feel is in the best interest of the community. I don't really have an opinion in any other direction than that.
Thanks, Chief. Tom?
I have opinions. What is the reason for the 500? What would be the reasons for the 500 foot?
Sure, and that's just what the state legislature came up with when they made all these marijuana laws.
Mm-hmm.
They put up, they're the ones that set up these 500 and 1,000 foot boundaries that a city can. So I think, for example, like we talked about the splash pad, or if you have a baseball field, you probably don't want a dispensary right across from a place where children are at play. And like Scott said, it isn't just marijuana. We talk about it for, liquor. We talk about it for adult use. I think it's just that these are kind of adult things and you keep them out of areas that are maybe made for children.
What are the current restrictions on where you can put a bar, or a restaurant that serves alcohol?
Again, I think it's from zoning. You have to fit into a certain zone. I was having this discussion with Lynn, and I think it goes back probably, 20, 30 years, but there was a time you couldn't be within so many feet of a church to have a liquor license. I think since we have recently changed our liquor code, that has changed. But, I can't tell you for certainty just because of the current change in our liquor code if we have setbacks like that.
Yeah, and I mean, I've made no secret of the fact that I don't think that cannabis should be regulated any harsher or be more limited than alcohol. I mean, I personally believe that alcohol is far more harmful. And then I guess I would open up my question to the committee members. I mean, by not allowing a cannabis dispensary within 500 feet of a park, I mean, what are we afraid of? What is the boogeyman going to come and grab our kids? If the boogeyman is stoned, he's probably more interested in going to Holidays to get Doritos. I'm just curious as to what the reasoning is behind that argument of keep it as far away from anything where a child might be as possible. I mean, we've got restaurants and establishments downtown that serve alcohol. Should we be doing more to keep our children away from that? I mean, do we want to make it so that parents can't bring their kids to the splash pad and then go have dinner next door and get a beer? I mean, and if you look at the businesses that are already downtown, I mean, they don't have flashing signs or intrusive marketing or trying to draw extra attention to themselves. I mean, they're just business people that want to sell a legal product, to be consumed by adults, and the city has checks and processes and procedures in place to make sure that we're only selling to legal adults. It's not like a kid can go play kickball and then walk over and buy a joint at the store, So I'm just curious, if a business owner wants to come in and start a business, I mean, why should we have to burden them with, for example, requiring a standalone building or, not letting them place their store in a high traffic area? So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I mean, if we can have restaurants downtown that serve alcohol, should be able to have businesses downtown that can dispense cannabis. Both legal products, both available to 21 plus. That's where I'm coming from.
Thanks, Tom.
I guess
Scott,
just a
sounded
quick
like you
comment.
wanted
As
to
far
have
as from the committee, you were wondering how the committee would respond to this. I think the factor that most directly plays into your question is how with alcohol, that's something that you can consume and you can kind of within yourself deal with. Whereas with marijuana, everybody is aware of it. It's the smoke is what gets out there. And that was the concern with being close to residential areas and with being in a standalone building. That if, for example, it was in a downtown business building with apartments above, now you've got the smoke and the issue of that getting to where it maybe isn't welcome. And that was the key factor. It's not something you keep to yourself when the smoke is out. And that's, I mean, we've got restaurants that used to be full of smoke that now by law, there's no smoking in restaurants for that same reason. So that's that point that probably answers that question most directly, but probably not completely for you.
Well, I would just, and I think we'll move on. I think, well, we'll let everyone have an opportunity to talk. I just think, and I don't, my intention is not to debate. I think I agree with the chief. Whatever the intention of a majority of the council members is, that's what's going to happen. But I do think, I have to say, like, the consumption of tobacco or marijuana versus the sale are two different things, and where we allow those, I think we have ordinances that are in place as far as what's allowed in city parks, and I suppose with near city parks, I don't think that the consumption of smokable marijuana is allowed in the current law, so I think that's a different topic, but regardless. Okay, go ahead.
See, I don't want to put alcohol and marijuana in the same category. There's a difference. You can go out and have a glass of wine. You can go out and have a beer, 1 or 2 beers. People don't do it to get impaired. They go out to have a glass of beer. They go out to enjoy a glass of wine. If they have too many, yes, they become impaired. Except for medical use marijuana, when people are buying marijuana, they're buying it to be impaired. You're buying it after 1 joint, whatever it is, they are impaired. They cannot drive. It affects their ability. I do not want alcohol and marijuana put in the same category. Because, like I said, you can go out and have a few beers and you're not impaired and you're not doing it except for the people who go out there just to get wasted, and that's their idea. But except for the people taking medical marijuana, after that first joint or however the form is that you're taking about it, you're impaired. So there's a difference. When the people are, as far as I'm concerned, the people who are taking it other than medicinal use are doing it to get impaired.
Thanks, Brent. So this,
Your Honor, I know we want to cut it off, but I just want to
that's all right.
provide a counterpoint. I mean, I respectfully disagree. There are people. I mean, I knew people when I lived in the Netherlands where marijuana was legal. I mean, I knew guys that would just smoke all day long, and they held down jobs, and they did just fine, you know. And I mean, I know I've met people that could have a couple puffs and just be blasted and useless, you know. But alcohol, I mean, you know, if you find a 100-pound person that has those same 2 glasses of wine, they're going to be feeling pretty darn good and not able to drive a car and going to have impaired judgment. So I don't think it's fair to use generalizations like that unless you've got, you know, specific peer-reviewed data to back that up. I mean, I feel like that's playing into the stigma against cannabis, which I think is really unfair, because I know people that can consume and you wouldn't even know it. I mean, they're fine, and people who can't, you know. But I think to just automatically assume that it's the devil's lettuce and it's gonna, you know, reefer madness, it's gonna ruin all of our kids and we're gonna have, you know, hippie potheads running around. Please take a step back and understand that. I mean, there are business owners in our community that consume cannabis. I mean, I'm sure a lot more people than you realize, and most of the time you'd have no idea. And I mean, I understand it has its problems, but I can personally vouch for the fact that alcohol has its problems too. So, just my 2 cents, and I'll be done.
Thank you. No, I'm just going to try to bring us back together a little bit. I know that I really do respect everyone's opinion, and I know people feel very passionate about this topic, and there's going to be a lot of differences, but I just want to put things back into perspective a little bit, and just that, from a registration standpoint, I think we've talked that, we're looking at probably 2 businesses, maybe 3 at the most, that would be allowed in town. So I don't want us to get, it's an important topic, but when you think of, we're just trying to find zoning for 1 or 2 places in town, like, I get that this can kind of get away from us. But I just think, again, we want to be, mindful, I think is maybe the best phrase, not only for the people that are looking at these businesses, but also for our residents. And like I said, I think the committee has really done a good job. And again, even though we might set policy today, doesn't mean that we can't redo it or loosen a policy in the future. And I think, the one thing that we haven't even talked about as a committee yet is building codes, and these are coming from the state. And the last thing I've seen is, you're probably looking at $500,000 to $1 million just to get a property up to the building code set by state. So, we can sit here and talk about, different things, but the reality is the developer's going to have to come in, look at the properties, find out which buildings are even going to be suitable. I just think, again, we need to be, transparent and set out a level playing field for all people so that they know, hey, yeah, you can do this, but, these are the areas in which you can operate, and then you're going to have to start following some of the zones. So I think it was a good discussion, and I appreciate everybody's
Yeah.
feedback.
Go ahead. No, you haven't talked yet.
I would say maybe the next time we have this discussion, can we talk a little bit about the difference between like manufacturing and retail, and maybe there's 2 different areas from that point of view, and then I would concur with what the chief is saying. I think we can always start off with one thing, and then this council can change it. So if we decide that industrial is the best place for it, or west of town is the best place for it, and then we can always, if it's not an issue, we can always allow it downtown.
Thanks,
So,
Anthony. Last comments, Scott?
Let Laura do
Oh,
what she had
go,
talked.
Laura.
So, and to Tom, your question about, why imposing the 500 feet. And, in our discussion, we had commented, Chief of Police had said, it's probably easier where you put these parameters in place and then you loosen them as you understand as things are coming through from the state. So that's kind of where we were at too, is we can start here and then we can loosen from there.
That's a good point.
And we did, I think the group did try to look at different buildings in town to see we don't have a shortage of vacant buildings in town. So I think that is one positive thing that the group did look at, potential reuse of some of our buildings that are just, sitting empty. And I think, again, we're not going to know until we have somebody approach us to say that they're looking at, putting a retail establishment in. But I think what we have now compared to what the future is going to be, I don't think necessarily just a storefront is going to be the future of this business. A lot of them, I think they're going to want their own parking and that kind of stuff. So, but again, I do appreciate everybody's comments, and I think.
I just got one little thing, Ben. I'm glad we brought this, we had this discussion about, okay, we can sit and our committee can talk about what direction we're gonna go when we get to the council, and it's not gonna pass. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to have everybody kind of on the same playing field. I want an 8-0 vote. I don't want a 4-4, and then.
I'm not sure you're going to get that.
Then me and Ben are gonna, but I think we can, but we can talk respectfully after. What I want to say is just let's talk amongst each other off when we're out here and get this resolve things. I understand Tom, and I'm sure he understands me.
Absolutely. Completely
That's
agree.
it.
So thanks, Scott, for that. And it is good. Thanks for leading the discussion at the committee and here, Chief. And Scott, to your point, I I think the process of going through a process that involves the public, and there's public hearings I suppose there'd be public hearings, or at least opportunity for the public to weigh in at the planning commission and again at the council. I think it's all about the process. So thanks for leading that, Chief. And with that, everyone good? I think there's clear direction where the majority of the council
If we
is
do
at.
have public hearings on the issue, we should maybe get stickers for all the bags of Doritos in town so that we
All
can.
right, we're adjourned.
Make sure we get the word out there.